mice. So it seems unfair that we're dealing with invasions so far. We'll have friends later. I'll hand over to Marissa.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to talk to you all about some medieval pigs. So throughout the Middle Ages, animals were punished for crimes committed against their human neighbors, ranging from property damage to murder. My dissertation, from which this paper is derived, is focused on the executions of pigs in 14th and 15th century Burgundy for the murders of human children. There are many components of this that are worthy of discussion, but for the purposes of this presentation, I will be focusing on the interactions of pigs and children that led to the executions of the pigs and the factors that brought pigs and children into contact. In 1444, a pig named Varay killed and murdered an unnamed young girl in the fields around the village of Saint-Prix, just southwest of Dijon. The victim is otherwise absent from the document, which is an entry in an account book that details the expenses of the murderous pig's execution. This leaves a ground fertile for questions and speculation. How old was the girl? Young, but likely old enough to walk on her own, given the location of the murder, perhaps between 3 and 6. Maybe our unnamed child accompanied a parent or other guardian to the fields as they completed some necessary task and wandered off on her own for a moment. Or perhaps she followed a group of other children as they played near the village, out from under the feet of caretakers at home. Whatever the circumstances, the trip ended in tragedy when she came into contact with a foraging swine. The document in which Varay the murdering pig appears, despite the gaps in detail, gives us a rare glimpse into the everyday human-child relationships that were typical throughout Burgundy and indeed throughout medieval Europe as a whole. These injurious or deadly interactions could only occur because of the pigness of pigs and the childishness of children, the unique sets of behavioral, physical, and cultural characteristics that place these two types of beings in shared spaces within their communities and proximity as neighbors. While historians have investigated pig executions in the guise of medieval animal trials in the past, the fact that the victims of these crimes were children has been largely overlooked or treated as an irrelevant detail. In doing so, historians ignore a vitally important aspect of these incidents. It matters that pigs, out of all possible offenders, are the ones who killed, and that children, out of all possible victims, are the ones who died. Any medium to large-sized domestic animal is capable of knocking over a child in the right circumstances, but only a pig is liable to eat the downed child in the ensuing excitement. Although humans of all ages encountered pigs on a near daily basis, the lives of children and pigs intertwined in a way unlike those of pigs and adults. The most common victims of pigs were young children or infants, due to the differences in physical size, strength, and mobility between adult pigs and juvenile humans. Their interactions happened with frequency in the daily patterns of life, both rural and urban. Pigs and children were neighbors in a very literal sense. The majority of such interactions were surely benign. Pigs and children passing one another on the street, children feeding and caring for pigs, pigs and children observing one another in forests, fields, and city streets. But the potential for conflict and danger existed in perpetuity. These sites of contact and conflict were both relational and physical spaces in which pigs violated the boundaries of acceptable community behavior by injuring, killing, and sometimes eating human children. And those boundary-crossing pigs subsequently died at the hands of human executioners for those indiscretions. The agency of humans and pigs alike facilitated these encounters, both parties possessing the power to act in ways that had direct impact on one another. The physicality and behaviors of pigs and children, as well as their respective roles and spaces in Burgundian communities, created the circumstances that led to their intertwined deaths. The moment of death that joined child and pig exemplifies the sort of meeting grounds that the two occupied. The lived experiences of medieval pigs and the basic conditions of common life shared by Burgundian pigs and children varied based on location and temporality. The physical spaces in which they met mattered, because the spaces provided different modalities for their interactions and helped define the shape of their encounters. Medieval Burgundian children had a great deal more contact with living pigs than the average modern child. Pigs wandered into or shared their homes, roamed their communities, foraged in nearby forests and fields where children played, and made nuisances of themselves at every available opportunity. Their omnipresence and the early integration of children into family and community activities created a multitude of points of contact and conflict between the two entities. They interacted as the two parties went about their lives. Children and animals interacted in innumerable ways. Those encounters could be deadly through both direct, deliberate interactions and through freak accidents, like that which occurred when a small child drowned because a pig knocked her into a pond. Pigs were not the only animal dangerous to children. In one unfortunate and very memorable case, chickens entered a home and scattered embers onto a cradle, burning an infant to death while her mother was away at mass. But pigs were the most frequent offenders. Adults clearly acknowledged the danger, with one parent writing that he wished his child to stay in the care of guardians until, quote, he reaches the age to defend himself against pigs and dogs. Away from adult supervision, children could also be destructive and violent to pigs. Violence was a thread that bound child and pig together. Other domestic animals might bite or kick, but pigs were a particular and known source of danger, as evidenced by their involvement in a number of miracle stories and their continuous presence in legal proceedings and coroner's rolls. They wandered through open doors into homes where they might find a baby, conveniently at snout level for snacking purposes, whom they could bite, and cradles that they could overturn. The exact type of incident pictured in a late 15th century votive image from Grothmain Parish Church in Salzburg. The incident depicted by the master of Grothmain depicts an injured child on the ground, their arc-footed cradle overturned as their mother prays for intercession, and the porcine miscreant creeps out the door. The practice of swaddling, as well as the containers in which guardians kept sleeping children, increased their risk of death by pig when children were left home alone. Swaddled babies could not move away from a pig attack, nor could they roll over if a pig knocked them out of a cradle, leading to suffocation, death by fire, and drowning. The injuries caused by pigs in these incidents could be horrific. The sow executed for the murder of a 4-month-old in San Nicolas had bitten the child on the head, left hand, and right breast. Although detailed medieval accounts of these injuries are scarce, one 19th century description of a pig attack describes a scene that might well have taken place centuries before, in which a pig opened the door to a house with her snout, came inside, and grabbed a 9-week-old infant by the arm as he lay in his cradle. Having acquired her prize, the sow proceeded to remove and eat the baby's right arm before moving on to the left. When the child's mother returned from her errand, she fainted upon seeing her son in such a state. The baby clung to life for a time before dying in tremendous pain. Tragedies such as this occurred so commonly that readers of Chaucer's Knight's Tale could easily imagine a scene such as the lurid and dreadful painting found in the Temple of Mars that depicted a sow devouring a baby right out of a cradle, amongst descriptions of barns burning, murders, battles, and other images of death and destruction. Pig bite-related death remained common until at least the 16th century throughout Western Europe. Keeping the door to the residence closed, as you might imagine would be a reasonable fix to this solution, or to this problem, did not guarantee safety. In one case, 3 pigs, 2 sows, and a boar, rampaged through town, whereupon one of the sows broke down a door, knocked over a baby's cradle, and ate a blanket. Instances in which humans kept their pigs alongside a host of other domestic animals in their homes further increased the points of contact between children and pigs. Pigs and humans also lived closely together in urban environments, even when they weren't sharing a home directly. Porcine inhabitants of cities lived in the streets, courtyards, and town squares, and unmanned pigs roamed the streets alone or in small groups. Swineherds and drovers led their charges through city streets to market, creating even more opportunities for contact between pigs and children. The late medieval urban shift towards confinement meant that pigs sometimes lived in sties, which were dedicated small buildings built or repurposed as pig living spaces or in stalls. Confined pigs could cause trouble in their sties. The sow of Savigny, along with her 6 piglets, was caught literally red-snouted on January 10th of 1457 after killing and eating 5-year-old Jehan Martin. Unwanted porcine visitors were a constant nuisance. Pigs roamed the streets through crowds of humans where they hindered traffic, smelled bad, and caused accidents. They injured people of all ages, killed and ate children, dug up bodies of the dead, destroyed houses and gardens, and otherwise wreaked havoc upon their villages and cities. Municipal governments often passed laws or ordinances in attempts to legally curtail the free movement of pigs and the areas in which they could congregate to protect property and the populace from damage and injury. Even locales that did not have a tradition of executing their pigs, like England, regulated their pigs through the use of ordinances and laws and fined humans who allowed their pigs to circumvent these norms. Many localities required that swineherds accompany their charges while they moved through town, and regulations existed that dictated which streets and areas of town pigs could legally use and traverse. Urban spaces that allowed for free-range pig activities could still mandate limits, and often did. In 1354, the city of Norwich gave strict guidelines regarding when pigs could be out of their enclosures, from noon until evening on Saturdays for the purposes of cleaning the enclosures. During this general pig amnesty, pigs wandered about freely, although their human caretakers were still responsible for ensuring they did not cause trouble during their afternoons on the town. At any other time of the week, swine found wandering loose could be killed by the finder without penalty. Many cities banned pigs from town altogether in response to these destructive tendencies, or legally confined them to certain areas or types of building. The pigs of the Hospitallers of St. Anthony, identifiable by the bells hanging around their necks, were traditionally exempt from laws about wandering pigs, but even St. Anthony's swine could be banned from the streets if they caused enough trouble. In locales without blanket pig bans, pigs both lived and died in town. People defended their urban pig keeping, as seen in this picture, by citing the necessity of raising them for food, the value of their manure, their use as garbage disposals, and by falling back on the notion that it was a right afforded to them by custom from time immemorial. We've always been able to do this. Sometimes people tested the limits of acceptable urban pig keeping, as in 1457 when Jehan Griffon kept 60 pigs in the center of Amiens. Families sometimes found legal limits placed on the number of pigs they could own for reasons of sanitation and safety, as in 1389 when Rome limited families to 4 pigs. Rural pig owners had fewer restrictions on the numbers of pigs they could own, but laws about pig mobility abounded. Pigs found wandering about could be impounded, fined, forfeited, and even killed, as demonstrated here. Pigs were explicitly identified for their harmful nature in legal texts. The capacity of pigs for destruction in vineyards was of special concern. The stakes were high. The importance of wine production for the financial well-being of Burgundians meant that pigs could have an enormous financial impact on entire towns, to say nothing of the potential of loss of life or serious injury. In rural areas, pigs typically lived communally in herds and fed in fallow fields or foraged in forests. These locations constituted sites of frequent child-pig encounters, like that between Beret and her victim at the beginning of the paper. Children played outside without much, if any, adult supervision, and they found the activities of animals to be entertaining, just like people do today, often interacting with them through the course of play. They accompanied adults on trips to the forest to fetch kindling and food and wood. Adults assigned animal-related tasks like bird scaring, geese herding, and pig minding to children. Late medieval viewed single and small groups of pigs as a sort of middle difficulty animal in terms of care, easier to care for than cattle, horses, or large groups of animals, but harder than fowl, and thus saw their care as suitable for children from around the ages of 7 or 8 in areas both urban and rural. This does not mean that adults did not see pigs as potentially dangerous to these children. Indeed, it was not uncommon for a child to be in charge of animals that they were too small to control, and this was noted. Although professional adult swineherds existed, the majority were children, minding small to medium-sized herds, and accidents could and did happen. Working with larger and more valuable animals, including pigs, requires strength and experience that younger children just often lacked. When pig-shaped disaster struck, adults often recognized too late that a task had been too physically difficult and risky for a child to perform. Urban pigs remained either in town under the supervision of their human families, or joined their neighbors when swineherds privately employed or hired by the town as municipal service gathered the pigs of the community and herded them to pasture or forest. The municipal swineherd of Saint-Marcel-les-Jussy, Jéhon Léhanche-Bay-Mounet, entrusted the care of 2 herds of the town's pigs to his son, Perrinot, in early September of 1379. Unfortunately, 3 pigs mortally wounded the child, who was subsequently found by his father just outside the town gates, in an instance like this, although with more death. Luckily for the rest of the pigs in the herd, the people of the town who relied on their meat and financial value, although every pig in the herd was initially arrested, the 3 pigs identified as the culprits were the only pigs to face the hangman's noose. The examination of the intertwined lives of pigs and children in medieval Burgundy reveals a complex tapestry of shared spaces and interactions that were punctuated by violence. The agency of both humans and pigs played a crucial role in facilitating these encounters, leading to moments of conflict between these interspecies neighbors and at times fatal consequences. By placing pigs and children at the center of the narrative, we can challenge an anthrocentric understanding of these events and thus broaden our understanding of medieval Burgundian communities. The natures of pigs and children created the space in which the 2 entities could meet, building community by sharing in common the conditions of their lives. It is out of such things that a community is made, at the unexpected intersections of diverse but interwoven lives. The curious natures of pigs and children brought them into direct contact and conflict with one another, as did the machinations of human adults. Because neither pigs nor children experienced much direct supervision in their daily lives, they followed their own directives and created their own shared world.
I'll just have a